Some of you've heard me tell this story before, but I think just for the general group here, I want to tell you, when I was a brand new young lawyer in 1979, a guy came into my office and he said, "Mr. Dolan, I'd like you to represent me. I've been wrongly convicted of writing a bad check." And I said, "Well, that's great." And I charged him the princely sum of $1,500, which at the time was a lot of money, I thought, and he gave me a check. So after the check bounced, he came back to the office and he said, "What do we need to win this case?" And I was not that happy with this guy at the time. I said, "You need $10,000 cash and F. Lee Bailey on our team, and maybe we have a chance." Thinking I was sort of blowing him out the door and I was never going to see this guy again. He literally came back slightly less than $10,000 cash in a briefcase. I'd never seen that much money in one place at one time. I was very happy. My partners were really happy because there were two former DAs and they'd never seen money like that ever. So that was a good thing right there. And then he said, "You have an appointment next week in Los Angeles with F. Lee Bailey." And I said, "Oh yeah, sure." So I went there to this tall building in Los Angeles and I sat there in this conference room of some law firm. I forget what the name of the law firm was. 45 minutes after the appointed hour, I said, "Okay, that's it. You know, this is obviously a scam. This guy's full of beans." Then I hear this racket and clatter, and this helicopter lands on the roof. And in walks in this little guy, F. Lee Bailey. To me, he was a little guy, about 5'7", I think, 5'8". Big barrel-chested guy, looked like the Tasmanian devil. And so he read this document that we'd gotten from the court that said you'd have this certain kind of hearing. And after reading the document, he said, "What do you think we should do?" And I said, "We should have one of those kind of hearings." And he said, "Good thinking. Okay, let's meet with your client in your office in 2 weeks down in Orange County." So I said, "Okay, great." So he left, and I drove back home thinking, "Oh my God, I just spent some time with F. Lee Bailey. I'm not a lawyer for 2 years. This is pretty cool," because F. Lee Bailey was the dude. I mean, he was the brand name of criminal trial defense lawyer. So he comes to my office 2 weeks later. The client comes in and he asks me to excuse myself from my office. You know, I'm in my office sitting in my chair. He says, "Why don't you just go outside and let me talk to this guy?" "Oh, it's F. Lee Bailey. Okay, you can use my desk." So he comes back out and says, "Could you have Irene help us? We need to make up a little a trust deed." And I said, "What trust deed?" He goes, "No, well, he's going to give me a $35,000 trust deed against his house." And I said, "You know, I don't think that's such a good idea because I'm not quite sure this guy owns anything." He said, "Oh, he's fine, he'll be fine." Well, of course, we found out later that he never owned the house he gave the trust deed on to F. Lee Bailey. So I'm here to announce to you, I got paid more than F. Lee Bailey on the case we did together. And it was right in San Bernardino County, and honestly, we won. And it was Judge Zebarth. You all know Judge Zebarth, who sits by assignment sometime. And it turned out later there was a long and very bizarre story. But the best thing that happened, besides being associated with F. Lee Bailey, was that I got to know Ken Fishman. Because for years, Ken Fishman has been, I would say, the brains behind the outfit there. If you look at the books that are published by, I think it's Thompson West, you'll see it's Fishman, it's Bailey and Fishman. And Ken Fishman became such a close friend. We did so many cases together. We enjoyed each other's company. Irene and I traveled to Boston. We went to Lee Bailey's 50th birthday party when Irene was pregnant with AJ, so I know that it's almost 33 years ago. Something happened after about 10 years, and it took us another 10 or 20 years to get together again, but we asked Ken to be AJ's godfather, and he met her when she was about 6 months old and hasn't seen her since, so he finally got to see her here today. Ken Fishman is one of the few people in the world that I know that has a great sense of humor, is as diligent as it comes as a practicing lawyer, and is scary smart. When you talk to people that are scary smart and you think you're following and then you get left in the dust, that's what happened to me in calculus. That's what happened to most of these people in mathematics. That's why they're lawyers. I just want you to know that Ken Fishman is a lifelong friend, a pal, godfather to AJ, one of the smartest people I know in the legal profession, and has a moderately decent sense of humor as well. So Ken Fishman, please.
Thanks, John. Well, Dean Dolan, Registrar the Queen, distinguished speakers and faculty, family and friends, and most importantly, the graduates of the California, I'm going to remember this, California Desert Trial Academy, College of Law. I'm really very excited about hearing. I'm extremely grateful for having been asked to participate in this wonderful and historic occasion. I'm also extremely and humbly grateful and honored to see my name on a classroom in the new campus of your law school. But finally, I got to tell you, I'm most grateful. I am absolutely most grateful, given the fact that I'm from Massachusetts, that these graduation ceremonies are being held inside. So as I was sitting listening to Judge Hopp reminiscing that this was 30 years since he graduated from law school, it suddenly dawned on me that it's been 40 years since I graduated from law school, almost to this day. Aren't you all shocked about that? Well, and I was reflecting on the fact that at the time I was a young lawyer working at F. Lee Bailey's firm, and following graduation, we were in the midst of preparing pretrial motions for a certain case called United States versus Patricia Campbell Hearst. And many of you aren't old enough to know who she was, but she was a newspaper heiress who had been kidnapped by the Symbionese Liberation Army and then ultimately was arrested for having participated, allegedly, in the bank robbery at the Hibernia National Bank. And we were myself and a contemporary who had both just graduated law school, were working day and night on the motions. And all of a sudden I turned to him one day and I said, guess what? We're in a lot of trouble. We are really in a lot of trouble. Fact of the matter was, it was 2 weeks before the bar exam. We hadn't studied. We hadn't attended a bar prep course. We really weren't that smart, as John has suggested. And I knew we were in trouble. So we begged our way out of the office and studied like crazy for 2 weeks and started to hear about things we had never heard about, something called the UCC, something called adverse possession. We had no idea what these subject matters were about. And then we really knew we were in trouble. Well, there's a miraculous ending to the story. We took the bar, we both passed, and it truly is remarkable. So the lesson from this story is this is not an advised approach to preparing for the bar exam, not at all. I mean, I was just lucky. But the fact of the matter is that you folks, you graduates, will be surprised about how much you know already. I know you're really apprehensive about taking the bar exam, understandably, but particularly because of the type of law school education that you have received, that is, you're learning by doing. You're going to be in very good stead for taking that bar exam. And I know I'm going to hear really good news about that in a couple of months. So let me reflect back on that time some 40 years ago, almost, I guess more like 36 years ago, about the case that John was referring to. This school's illustrious founder, John Dolan, had virtually all the attributes necessary to become a successful trial lawyer. He was smart. Believe it or not, he was handsome at the time. He was glib. He was motivated. He had a barrel full of gumption, which he hasn't lost, a reasonable sense of the importance of the role of the justice system, a fire in the belly to be the best, and most important, a vibrant, dedicated partner in the form of Irene the Queen, who quite frankly was much brighter than this up-and-coming star criminal defense lawyer, author, negotiator, professor, and lecturer. John was also smart enough to know what he didn't have, and despite his immense raw talent, and he really was and continues to be an extremely talented lawyer, he recognized what he was missing was any meaningful training and education to be a trial lawyer. What he figured was that he would have to not only boldly and brashly march forth into the scary world of a courtroom and try cases, but also to try to find a way, in the absence of a mentor, to observe and learn from some of the real pros of the day. So while many of the aspects of our justice system in the United States flow from the English system, the one part that failed to make it across the pond is the method of educating and training trial lawyers. As I'm sure you know, the British barristers, as distinguished from the solicitors, are the attorneys that go to court and litigate cases. Unlike the United States, where anyone with a license to practice can represent a person at trial, in the United Kingdom, of course, barristers are separately regulated by the Bar Standards Board and must be members of one of the Inns of Court. There, the would-be trial lawyers are educated and actually frequently dine with the barristers. And once a student graduates, he or she must pass the bar professional training course, and only then may they wear the mantle of a barrister. What truly sets the British system apart from ours, however, is what follows. Before the new barristers can practice on their own, they must spend 12 months of pupillage, during which they must shadow a more senior attorney for 6 months, and then begin to slowly engage in some court work, still supervised by their mentors. So back to John Dolan. In 1979 or 1980, he finds this client that he refers to. He ostensibly, with enough money to entice F. Lee Bailey, as it turns out, he really didn't have anything, but he knew not only that Bailey was likely to be able to help his client, but he also knew that this would give John a chance to work with somebody who was really well known and really very talented, very famous, and gather from that some experience that he might not otherwise obtain. And for those of you who are not as old as I am, you know, Bailey was the lawyer that Tonight Show host Johnny Carson used to call Flea. Bailey represented many of the nation's most notable wrongfully accused individuals, including Sam Shepard, whose story is the one that became the TV show and the movie The Fugitive, the Boston Strangler, and if you recently watched the FX series on O.J. Simpson, Lee Bailey played a major role in the cross-examination of Detective Furman. So to round out the story, this was also my opportunity to meet John, and that's become one of the most important parts of my life. And by the way, Bailey, who is still around at the ripe young age of 83, really deeply regretted, because he also respects John and Irene, that he wasn't able to be here and join you in the ceremony today. So throughout his career, Bailey would teach by showing, but he'd also by sharing his wisdom. In fact, it was this very first case that John has talked about. We were sitting in the courtroom. I had done most of the preparation work, and I was now sitting back letting the master do the hard work of cross-examination. And all of a sudden, after one of the lead investigators testifies, Lee Bailey turns to me and says, "Go cross-examine him." Or actually, as he used to say, "KJ, go cross-examine him." You have to talk in a really basso profundo voice to be Bailey. So, and I was just startled. I hadn't prepared to do this. And what was he doing? This was crazy. So I pick up every piece of paper that's around me, depositions, all the pleadings. I've got a stack of paper this high as I'm approaching the podium. And he takes these paper and he grabs them from my hand and he says, "Go cross him. You know this case better than anyone. Just go cross-examine him." And it was a lifelong lesson. You cannot effectively cross-examine a witness using a script or burdened by papers. While you need to have developed goals for your cross-examination, your questioning must react to the witness's answers. And you cannot hear those answers if you are reading rather than listening or looking at documents. So as a trial lawyer for some 27 years, that's a scary thought as well, and a trial judge for the last 13 years, I cannot overemphasize how much more effective the listening examiner is than the reading one. As John well knows, Lee long bemoaned the absence of a law school that truly taught students how to try cases. He saw a diminishing breed of masters like himself. He had small ego. He knew he was a master. Able to share their knowledge and technique with the new generation of lawyers. and thus an absence of a meaningful training ground, either academic or clinical. Now, and from my perch on the bench for the last 13 years, I'm actually here to sadly report that he is right and continues to be right, particularly in the criminal area where the stakes are far more important. I'm witnessing a frightening and growing inability of counsel to afford their clients the effective assistance of counsel that's guaranteed to them by the 6th and 14th Amendments to the United States Constitution. Most notably, for many lawyers, whether prosecutors or defense counsel, they simply don't know how to conduct cross-examination, a most essential tool of a trial lawyer. Cases are being pled out with little sense of their true triability. And in the worst scenario, some people are being convicted when they're actually innocent. And that's not just the fault of coerced confessions or faulty identifications, but also because defense lawyers fail to effectively expose the frailties of the prosecution's case. So what's the answer? Well, the answer starts right here. It is the foresight of a real trial lawyer named John Dolan, who had the vision to cure what he has long known, that law schools must not just teach students how to pass bar exams, how to draft a contract, conduct a real estate transaction, or research a legal issue. If you want to represent individuals in a courtroom, you must be trained to conduct a cross-examination, to not only know the rules of evidence, but to be able to effectively manipulate them during the heat of a battle, to strategize and be able to persuasively argue to a group of civilians sitting in judgment. The California Desert Trial Academy College of Law provides precisely the kind of legal education that will produce lawyers, trial lawyers, who can literally preserve our incredible system of justice. And you, its first graduating class, carry both the badge of honor and the burden of proving its worth. I am absolutely confident that you will be successful in this highly valuable endeavor, that you will be the best advertisement that this school could possibly ever have, that you will well represent your clients, and that by so doing, you will take an important step in improving the quality of justice in California. And my very best congratulations to all of you.
Thank you very much. So in case you all haven't noticed, you graduates here, you've had the presiding judge of Riverside County, an appellate court justice, a 35-plus year member of the district attorney's office, the public defender of Riverside County, and the partner of F. Lee Bailey. Not bad for our first graduation, huh?